Let's talk about quotations and how to punctuate them. Here we've got a sentence. I'm feeling better, she said. Where do you put the quotation marks? Well, obviously, I'm feeling better is what she said. So we put quotation marks around that piece. And then we put a comma here. And we put a period after she said. You almost always put a comma between the actual quote and then the statement of attribution, which would be the she said. Now, if we had a question here, instead of I'm, we had someone say, are you feeling better? Here, instead of the comma, we would do a question mark. And the question mark and the comma are both always inside the punctuation, or inside the quotation marks. So you always have the punctuation mark inside the quotation mark. That's also important to remember. In New Style, you only use commas, periods, and question marks. You never use exclamation marks. Here's another sentence. Hard work is good for you, said the executive. Nobody ever drowned in sweat. You can hear the way I pause that we have two sentences here. Hard work is good for you is the first quotation bit. So we put quotation marks around the hard work is good for you. And then we put a comma because then we have the words of attribution, the said the executive. And then we're going to put a period there. Nobody ever drowned in sweat is the next sentence. So we're going to put a period at the end of that sentence as well as quotation marks around them. Now, you might be tempted to put a comma here instead because you're not sure how this should go and how somebody would read it. But if you do that, you're making this into a run-on sentence. Hard work is good for you, nobody ever drowned in sweat. Obviously, that is two sentences, so you need to make sure the reader knows that by doing the proper punctuation. Now, the other way you could do this is say, hard work is good for you, nobody ever drowned in sweat, comma, said the executive. So you could take it out here, and then you wouldn't use this quotation marks, and instead you'd use a period. Hard work is good for you, period. You'd take away this quotation mark as well. Nobody ever drowned in sweat, said the executive. Here's another example. She said the federal government must do more. Now here, you can see that I already have something in surrounded by the punctuation, the quotation marks. Must do more is what she actually said, and she said it in a different manner. You're talking about different things about the federal government, etc. And this was the only part that you actually got down in your notes that you can remember for sure was a direct quote. Now, this is really, with just 3 words here, it really is kind of an orphan quote. In general, you wouldn't actually put quotation marks around it. You would just leave it as must do more. You're attributing it already to the fact that she said it, so people are going to know that this was the general idea. Now, if you start out with this sentence and it simply says, she said the federal government must do more, you have it in your notes, you really don't know if this was a direct quote or not, you can't ever put it all in direct quotation marks. You can only put something in a direct quote if you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was a direct quote, and then you have to do it exactly like that person said. Now, if she said something like, the feds, well, you know how they are, I really think that they must do more. That's not a very good sort of quote, so what you're going to want to do is merely paraphrase it and not do the direct quote. And that was because you can't really use that direct quote because it's kind of here and there, kind of messy. And because you can't use it as the direct quote because it's messy, you'll paraphrase it instead. The difference between simply a direct quote and paraphrasing is just simply those quotation marks around it. You still always need to make sure that you're getting at the general idea of what the person had to say. And when you do paraphrasing, it is best to use those specific words that the person did say rather than insert some of your own, unless it obviously needs your own words, the addition of your words to make it sound better. What do you do when you need to do a quotation within a quotation? And you would need to do that, for instance, if somebody was quoting something somebody else said, or if you're adhering to AP style and you need to designate the name of a movie or a book, for example. Here's a sentence. I loved the movie The Lord of the Rings, he said. Now, The Lord of the Rings obviously is what's messing us up. It's what also needs quotation marks. If you were just doing it regularly within the story and not within a quote, that you would put quotation marks around it. So you do double quotation marks here and double quotation marks around the whole thing? No. What you do is you do single quotation marks around Lord of the Rings, and then you do double quotation marks around the quote as a whole. So I love the movie The Lord of the Rings will have double quotation marks on it. We always put the comma before the quotation marks, and then he said, period. So what we're going to have is right here, we're going to have a single and then double quotation marks right next to each other. You might think it looks funny, but it is correct. You might be asking, when do you capitalize the information in the quote and when don't you? For instance, in this sentence, he said the project will save the state money. In this case, you're going to put a comma here and you are going to capitalize the T. So it is going to be like this with the quotation marks here and ending here. And the reason for that is because this is a full sentence. Now, if instead you're going to say something like, he said that the project will save the state money, then you wouldn't capitalize the T. And you're going to use that more often in a paraphrase. When you're putting quotes within a story, you have to make sure that the words that you use are impartial and don't show any kind of bias. Because of that, you can't just use any sort of verb to attribute, to use for your attribution. For example, you shouldn't ever say claimed. You should use argued and that type of thing very carefully. The best thing to do when in doubt is simply to say he said or she said. You might think it's kind of boring, gets kind of old, but then you don't have to worry about it. It's just that information, he said it, she said it. You're not putting anything else out there for people to get ideas about. Other good words to use that are impartial are comment, reply, declare, add, explained, state, continue, point out, note, urge, suggest, and warn. Be sure that you use those in the proper situations, however, as each of those words has specific cases where they can be used. Obviously, you wouldn't say that he explained the city council meeting will start at 11. No, he just said the city council meeting will start at 11. Don't use verbs such as hope, feel, believe, want, or think to attribute statements. And be sure that you never use words that aren't appropriate. For example, you can't do, it's a wonderful movie, she smiled. You don't smiled a statement. You might say it with a smile, but you don't smile a statement.